Does your brake pedal sound like this? Or maybe you're idling abnormally high. Your issue could be your brake booster.
This is your brake booster. This specific style of brake booster uses the engine's vacuum to help reduce the amount of force needed to push your brakes. Without it, pushing your brake pedal would be a lot harder. The brake booster will go bad for a couple of different reasons, including a brake fluid leak or just age and natural wear and tear. You can usually tell when the brake booster is going out because your brake pedal will be a lot more firm, or it'll make a hissing noise like you saw earlier in the video. A vacuum leak in your brake booster diaphragm or from the vacuum hose connecting to it could lead to unregulated air getting into your vehicle's intake, which could cause your vehicle to idle abnormally high. This vehicle I'm working on is my 1991 Ford F-150, but you could follow these same steps for most any vehicle that uses the vacuum-powered brake booster. I've determined that my brake booster is the issue, so let's get it replaced. And the first step to doing that is to disconnect this vacuum hose from the booster. With that done, we can take a 9/16 wrench and get these two bolts taken off. That will disconnect our master cylinder from the brake booster. With those bolts disconnected, we can now take off our brake fluid level sender plug. And when we're done with this job, we definitely want to make sure we reconnect this plug. When I originally bought the truck, it wasn't connected and I had a rear automatic braking system light on for a while until I realized this plug wasn't plugged in. And now we can pull our master cylinder apart from our brake booster. You want to inspect this area as you disconnect it. If there's brake fluid dripping out of the master cylinder, then you might need to replace it. Ours looks free of any brake fluid. There's just a little bit of grease in here to lubricate the push rod, which is perfect. And since we're not replacing the master cylinder, we won't have to disconnect any of these brake lines, which means we also won't have to bleed the brakes when we're finished with this job. And that makes it so much easier. We can now move to the inside of the vehicle. First, we're going to get our brake light switch assembly removed. First, we're going to remove this pin. And then the whole assembly should slide off of our brake pedal post. I haven't gone into this area since I purchased the truck, but it definitely looks like there's some components missing from our pedal assembly. I'll figure out what I'm missing and get those reinstalled later on. But with that all disconnected, we can now take our 9/16 wrench again, and we can start loosening these 4 nuts off of the studs holding the brake booster to the firewall. And now with those removed, there is nothing else holding this brake booster to the firewall. Let's go back outside the vehicle and get it removed. The brake booster is a bit big, so it'll take a little bit of wiggling and finessing to get this thing out of here. Just take your time and be patient. You don't want to accidentally cut any other vacuum lines around the area. Now the last thing we need to do with our old brake booster is to measure the push rod arm length. We want to make sure that we set our new one to the exact same length. So grab a tape measure and check the distance. Our push rod arm seems to be protruding about 15/16 from the outer part of the brake booster. And with that done, we can now prepare our new brake booster for install. This brake booster I got came with all the hardware needed to get this job done. And like I just showed you, let's remeasure this push rod arm to make sure that it's about 15/16 from the brake booster. That looks perfect. Now we can get these nuts off the studs. And on the back side here, we can remove this black plastic sleeve. When we install the new brake booster, we want to make sure that this vacuum port here is on the top left side of the brake booster. Now that the studs are lined up with the holes in the firewall, let's go back on the inside and get this thing tightened down a little bit. We're not going to completely tighten these studs down just yet until we make sure we have everything centered on the outside. But from here, we can get our brake pedal assembly reinstalled. I picked up this kit from OBS Solutions, which came with all the hardware that I was missing when I took this assembly apart. First, we're going to install one of these clear washers. And now we can slip on this black bushing onto the brake booster rod arm. And with that on, we can get our brake light switch reinstalled. We're supposed to be able to put on another one of these clear washers before we put on the cotter pin. However, I found with all those other things on there, my brake pedal post wasn't long enough to get the cotter pin pushed back in. So I'm going to be leaving off the outer clear washer. And now we can install our cotter pin to make sure that everything stays in place. And there is our whole assembly put together. Now we can reinstall our brake light switch plug. And you'll want to make sure that the wires for the plug are facing upward. Before we tighten down these studs on the inside, let's go back outside and get our brake master cylinder reinstalled. Our new brake booster comes with some grease already applied. I'm going to put a little bit more dielectric grease on the push rod arm to make sure that there's no unneeded wear on our brake master cylinder. Now we can realign the brake master cylinder and get those studs tightened down. And now that we know everything is lined up here, we can go back on the inside of the vehicle and tighten down those inner studs. Don't forget to reinstall your brake fluid level sender plug. And now we can reattach our brake vacuum hose line. Grab a friend and make sure that your brake pedal switch is working properly. And then finally, we can start up our engine and make sure that our new brake booster is working properly. Our brake pedal is nice and soft and we're not getting that hissing noise that we had earlier. And that is everything you need to do, guys, to replace the vacuum brake booster on your vehicle. Thank you guys very much for watching. If this video helped you, drop a like and subscribe to the channel to see more of my auto adventures.